shortly after I came to the university in 2000, and I arrived in the back end of 2006, but in 2007, with a colleague, I identified some money, which was specifically around industry engagement, and we had been engaging with the public quite well, older public, quite well through an existing mechanism, but it was very much a limited number of people. It was certainly a very limited number of subject matter that they were interested in discussing, and it was in danger of becoming tokenistic because of the small numbers that were engaged. So we set about forming something which then was called Voice North and is now a much bigger activity called Voice. And I'll use Voice to talk through the importance of and the mechanisms for public and patient engagement in projects. Now, in the past, patient engagement has been very much seen as the recruitment of people for trials, or telling people how good universities are at research. And that's about as far as it went. It's moved forward a hell of a long way now, and hopefully this will help to illustrate some of that. So what is Voice? Well, Voice is really now three things. First of all, it's a kind of a philosophy and a methodology, which suggests that research knowledge and business knowledge need to be complemented by the experience of the citizen or the patient in terms of developing insights into how we can move forward with products and services that will suit those individuals and will suit those individuals into the future. And that's particularly the case when we're talking about spaces where the makeup of society is changing. So we're talking about more older people, we're talking about an aging society. Those issues change the way in which we need to talk to people. That situation also means a more diverse society, because the main thing, or the biggest difference about older people is how different they are from each other. They've had time to make different choices, they've had time to encounter different challenges, have different things happen to them, and develop different aspirations. So an older society is by definition a more diverse society, and the rules of thumb that we've traditionally used and the tokenistic approaches that we've used to engagement just don't hack it anymore. So first thing is, it's a methodology that brings together those three sets of knowledge, if you like, the research knowledge, the knowledge of businesses and markets from companies, and the companies' business strategies and aspirations, together with the aspirations, experience, and wishes of the public, the citizen or the patient. The second thing is, it's a community of people who are interested in aging, and who have been involved in discussions and education and activity around aging over a period of time. And that differentiates it from market research. When you go out to do market research, generally you want the wild type human off the street, unsullied by previous knowledge and experience, who will just give you their sort of gut feeling about what it is you're trying to do. We use people who've actually been involved in thinking about aging, as well as their experience and education, so that they can really have an informed discussion, an informed consultation about aging-related activities. That community is not huge. It's probably about 1,000, 1,500 people at the moment, but it's linked to huge networks of thousands of people that we can access. And every time we run a project or an activity, that community gets bigger. And then the third thing is, it's a platform. So originally when we set up Voice, it was as Voice North, it was about local consultations. People came to us and sat in a room, and everything that we did was local, and as a result we only had a local community. And then quite reasonably people would challenge and say, well, is the Northeast really representative of the globe? Or is it really representative of the UK, or is it really representative of anything? And so what we've tried to do now with our more national positions, and we've got a number of channels. The National Innovation Centre for Aging is one, the NIHR Innovation Observatory is another. Those need national viewpoints, and so we're reaching out to find national to get national participation, and we're doing that through a digital platform. And having developed the digital platform, we're taking the opportunity to push further and try to establish global communities where we possibly can, so that we can actually deal with the need for businesses for a global view rather than just a UK-specific view. So why the hell would we do all this? This slide is not particularly designed for this conversation, but it's quite useful. So we promote this dialogue and debate between researchers, businesses, and patients and public. So that allows us to increase awareness of people about what the art of the possible is, so they don't get something just dumped on them. And we had a very good event a couple of years back around technology, where people were actually staggered about the amount of technology that was out there, what could be done with it, what was coming up, and they had no idea that these things were possible. So they had no basis on which to engage with them until we presented them with that sort of information. So we try to create a continuous dialogue and debate. We try to create challenge and indicate aspiration. And one of the key problems that we have with medical products in particular is that health services treat people as though they were patients the whole time. And actually, you're only a patient for a very small part of your life. Even when you're in the hospital and can't do anything else, you've still got a real life going on out there somewhere, and you don't really want the medicine to interfere with it if you can possibly avoid that. When you leave the hospital, it's all about the life, and the medicine can sort of fit in or not. And if it doesn't fit in, compliance will be rubbish. And it's as simple as that. We have with assistive technologies with older people, 50% of the stuff that is bought by local authorities and given to people, or by well-meaning family or friends, is left in the cupboard and never ever used, because it doesn't fit in with people's lives. It's ugly and unattractive, it's stigmatizing, it's inconvenient. And for those reasons, people would rather lose a capability than use the tools that they're being offered. So unless you can fit in with what people want to achieve, what they aspire to do, then you won't get good compliance with what you want your device or your tool or your intervention to achieve. So we think aspiration is really important, and the way that's indicated is by challenge from people who say what you're proposing doesn't fit with my life, or if it was like this, I'd be much more likely to engage with it, or why are you asking me that question? Why are you not asking me this other question? And that can be really useful. Needs and priorities are important. We don't want only to be looking at needs. The aspirations are important, but it is also important to understand the underlying needs. What is driving people? What are the unmet needs that are potentially markets and opportunities? And within those, what are people's priorities? What do they think is important? And we find, for example, pain is considered to be very important amongst older people, but also other things that you might think less about. I mean, packaging is hugely important. Being able to get into it primarily, being able to read it, all those sorts of things. Knowledge is important because you can't come to these discussions and make a meaningful and equal part of the discussion without actually having some kind of pre-knowledge, pre-understanding of what is being debated and the wider context in which it's operating. So in the past, our assumptions have always kind of been that the academic or the business in the room knows all about it, and the person is just kind of giving a less valuable opinion that might maybe shape something about whether we paint it blue or green or something relatively trivial. What we want to do is to make sure that people are able to participate as an equal partner in this tripartite conversation between what is the art of the possible, what is sellable, what is developable at a realistic price, and what do people want, need, and how would they like to receive it. And then experience is important. Some organisations have gone to great lengths to create suits that simulate being old. They normally take it to extremes, so they encompass everything that could possibly go wrong for someone as they get older and pile it into one experience. And they give young designers yellowed, sanded goggles so that they can't see very well, with blinkers on so that it narrows the vision. They have all sorts of devices to constrain movement and create discomfort. But it's not the same. They're going to take the damn thing off and go about their real lives before they ever actually start designing anything again. And B, actually, that's not how people experience their lives, because they adapt and they choose ways of behaving that minimize the impact on them of these various conditions and make them livable with. So it's much easier for an older person to remember what it was like to be young, especially most of us who don't really feel we've grown up very much at all anyway, than it is for a young person to imagine what it would be like to be old. So if we can get older people using their experience, often these are people who have professional experience, who may have been designers, who may have been involved in product development or architecture or all sorts of professional activities, and they're bringing with it the experience of actually growing older, the experience of themselves, the experience of their friends, and their acquaintances into that. And we can use those knowledge pieces all around the innovation process, really. So we can talk to people about what are the things that really that make life difficult, that annoy you, that get on your wick, that you'd pay money to change. And we can use that to identify and prioritize opportunities. We can use that to drive commissioning decisions as well within the buying area. So if we talk to the NHS about commissioning, we can use those priorities, and we have done, to make people think differently about the way in which they commission stuff. We can use it with business and industry to think about how they might design things differently. We do co-design workshops and things that allow people to have a realistic input into the eventual design of a product and the way in which they would choose to use it. And that hopefully helps us to identify some of the challenges that Greg spoke about the fact that actually in many cases there are dozens of different ways that you might use a thing. And actually it's very hard to anticipate what the training needs for somebody might be, because you're not really sure of what all the different ways they might choose to use it might be, or the different errors that they might make in using it might be. Sometimes it's useful to have citizens involved in some kind of delivery capacity, particularly this is in the case of research, where we do have people on oversight committees supporting the patient or the citizen experience aspects of a research program. And this can be very important, very useful when developing and managing a clinical trial, for example, or an evaluation. People's knowledge can also be used to disseminate. So actually, one of the things about older people is that they're not much swayed by whether David Beckham uses your product or not. They're more swayed by whether Joe that they meet in the pub has used it and had a good experience with it. And then they're more likely to try it. They trust him, they know he's a smart guy, and they're more likely to use that knowledge and information to guide their purchasing decisions. So actually having people knowledgeable about your product or service at a relatively early stage can be quite useful. And then right the way round to evaluating both the implementation of the product and its impact. And we're in the process of developing more formal living lab type mechanisms to be able to do that at greater scale with people in their own homes, in their own environments, so that we're not creating artificial test environments, but we're able to test in real life, in the field, with people who have said, yeah, we're interested in this stuff. We'd like to see it. We'd like to experience it. We'd like to give feedback on it. And it's actually quite interesting, some of the sorts of feedback that we get. So we did a task, and I'll name names. It was with Tunstall. And Tunstall have been delivering assisted living healthcare products for donkey's years. But they created a sort of home hub for digital tools. And they tried it in people's homes and then sent some engineers around to have a discussion with the people, and were horrified to find all of these super smart, discrete grey boxes that they'd invented, covered in Post-it notes, different colours and shapes, because all of the buttons had the functions moulded into the grey plastic in a very low-key fashion. And actually, people couldn't operate it. They had to stick these stickers on in order to make it possible for them to actually use the kit. Quite a surprising mistake for an organisation that's been developing and deploying this sort of kit for a long time, but it does happen. So how are we going about it? We started off in the northeast. We have expanded across the northeast initially, and then we've partnered with Imperial College down in London more recently. So at the heart of what we do at the moment, there are these two sites where there's an active patient and public engagement process based in the universities to give us scale, because we need lots and lots of projects going through. To maintain a big network of people, you need to keep them interested, you need to keep them active, you need a lot of stuff. So we've focused on the universities because they have a lot of projects, a lot of activity. So we've got a southern base and a northern base, although the north is where our headquarters is. We're talking, this is a kind of representative distribution of the sorts of places where we have people in the network, according to the postcodes that they have given us when they signed up. And we're now pushing out from that sort of basis. So the platform allows us to create the debate, to inform people, and to shape things more indirectly with larger numbers. We will still need to do face-to-face activities, face-to-face workshops and stuff to get the real richness. We recognise that, and we're looking at ways in which we can do that. And another reason why we partner with other universities is because they have the capacity to do that quite often and the interest to do that. We've designed the platform with the public so that they have had control on the way in which they want to be involved, the way in which they engage and participate, and they can continue to control that and tailor that as they make decisions about the way in which they're going to engage with the voice process. And we have services for researchers and industries to come in and share their opportunities on the platform and give people opportunities to participate. And built around that is also a learning platform where we can publish learning materials so people can. In the past, people used to come into Newcastle. They used to come to all our events. They used to learn about aging because there was all this stuff going on in Newcastle. Now we have to make that available to people across the UK. So that's what we're trying to do with the platform. The platform was initially built fairly cheaply as a kind of almost a prototype type activity. We learned a hell of a lot from that. We're now investing a significant amount of money from the National Innovation Centre to make that scalable so that it can work with very large numbers of people that we really want to see on there in due course. Something about the benefits that the patients perceive. They like to feel that they're in control of things. They like to feel that they're shaping what's happening, particularly shaping responses to their needs. They enjoy the platform's ease of accessing and giving feedback. They like the fact that actually there's not very much of a data control issue, and they're in control of what they want people to see, and it's very easy to use. We've worked with a lot of companies now. We started off that way. The model changed a little bit through the years because it was slow and hard slog to get business through and for business to fund this activity. So the university and its patient involvement activity funded a lot of the early work with this and kept it going through the lean years. But we've always been working with businesses. The businesses, I think without exception, have found it useful and a good experience to work with us. We've had a few really valuable activities. On one occasion, we had a company who had won a national contract, and they were challenged because they had a national contract to support self-assessment for assisted living technologies, and none of their client base knew what assisted living technologies or self-assessment was. So they weren't really quite sure how to talk about it. So we brought together a group to work with them, and they did some really good work about messaging and what words were suitable for use with and acceptable for use with older people, how they should express themselves. But in a kind of side discussion, they said to the managing director who was there, this is a shopping channel, you know. And he was very offended. He'd spent an awful lot of time and money making sure that he had several hundred years of occupational therapist experience embedded in this platform, and he didn't really like it being called a shopping channel. And he went away and he thought about it, and thought about it quite seriously, and he realized that what people were saying was that's how they wanted to experience it. That's what they felt they were doing in being on this thing. And they changed the front end of their tool from something that simulated a kind of occupational therapy assessment that a local authority might do to something that was more akin to something that you might do with selecting a product with someone like Amazon or something like that. They had 4 or 5 key questions that took you very quickly into the heart of the matter, and then a few minor questions that filtered that. And they had a 300% increase in the number of people who went through the process and selected a product. So phenomenal change as a result of an observation by older people within the consultation about something else. And it was Peter Gorder who was whose business did that piece of work. So these don't necessarily fit the commercial model particularly well, but this is sort of the way in which we work with research, in that the patients can create insight and help develop priorities from their online discussions on the platform. They can learn about subjects. They can then decide that these are subjects that they want to engage with, and they can identify opportunities to engage with those things nationally, in future, hopefully internationally. Those will include business opportunities to work with businesses if they're relevant. They then participate in a project or a workshop or whatever that might be. The important thing is there's feedback. So they get feedback from whoever runs that workshop or whoever commissions that workshop to say, thank you for your participation. This is what we learned. This is what we're going to do with it. We accept that it's commercially sensitive what exactly you're going to do with it, but people want to know that it's going forward in some way, and not that they've just sat in a room and had a good lunch. And then they get access to any papers that might be published and the feedback from people. And then they hopefully get to see that there's a change in the way that the conditions are managed, or there's a new product on the market, and that's what drives them actually. We found that very few people are interested in research for research's sake. They're interested in change and seeing change in what's available to them in the marketplace. This was a specific example of somebody who is a Parkinson's disease patient and has become very engaged with what we do. He's spent a lot of time working with us and giving feedback and stuff. He's participated in lots of Parkinson's discussions. He's participated in research around cognitive decline and gait, and he's been able to have access to the papers and see what's going on as a result, and is pleased to see that this is informing the way that things are diagnosed and managed. We have a good, experienced team. We're GDPR compliant on the platform at great length, and it's been co-designed with everybody, with standard terms and conditions for everyone to engage with and to use. And we're managing to maintain our independence. We use the best elements of being part of the university, in that the university is for the large part seen as a kind of independent organisation anyway, and to prevent the university controlling us too much, we don't tell it too much about what we do, which allows us to keep it a little bit more independent than it might otherwise be. We're working with about 50% of the NIHR biomedical research centres who've seen us as an opportunity to improve their patient engagement and involvement, and a number of other organisations there have been involved. We've been very heavily involved in Involve, the NHS's patient and public involvement activity, and we're compliant with their recommendations, and actually were in a large part, my co-director, the director of Voice, was very much central to that. She was part of the Involve program team. And we're now pushing out, we're working through EIT Health to develop European connections and contacts. We've got discussions going on in the States, in Singapore and Australia and other places around the world where we're looking for partners who can duplicate what we do in an international space. And so this really is the sort of thing that we're looking at. We're looking at global research evidence, what's happening, what might be happening in the future from university research, but also from trade information and such like. We're overlaying that with people's opinions and considerations and aspirations to create insights. We do workshops and things, and some of that we publish, some of it we hold, some of it we use directly with customers who've commissioned it as recommendations or to stimulate research and innovation in the future. That's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.